y'all fix to start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of tower, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother.
The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares are the best part of my day.
The goods from the wood.
Hot damn!
Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
Still overdressed and ready to come to a job interview near you, Pat Riley.
This is a good night, man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
And today we are joined by my good friend, the liberal redneck himself. It's
Trae Crowder.
fuck yeah, man.
I think that's it.
I like putting people on the spot. Just
So whose room are we in?
this is my room.
Yeah, I see the
See
Auburn,
the Auburn shit
flag.
everywhere.
Are these all your instruments?
They are, yeah.
You play all those?
I do, yeah.
Nice.
So
See, somebody sent me some random fan sent to my Meemaw's house in Salina, Tennessee, a ukulele.
what?
Yeah.
Oh man.
It was. She called me and was like, "You've got a package here, honey. It's addressed to the liberal redneck." And I mean, she knew what was going. This was early on. This was last summer, but I mean,
Yeah.
she still knew about the whole thing, so she knew that was for me.
Right.
But she was like, "It says liberal redneck on it." I was like, "Meemaw, do not
Yeah.
open that.
Yeah,
Don't
no
open
telling.
that." Because I mean, man, the internet.
Yeah,
Some of the
people are
messages
fucking
and stuff
crazy.
I was getting were insane.
Yeah, of
and so
course.
I was like, "There's no telling what that is." Like best case scenario, it's a high end dildo or something. You know what I mean? And like, I still don't want my Meemaw to see that shit.
Yeah,
Obviously,
Of course not.
and but she's like a classic, like nosy little old lady. I mean,
Yeah.
she's sweet as hell, but she's very nosy, and
Yeah.
so I knew she was going to open
That's what
it.
Meemaws are like, essentially.
Yes,
you know?
exactly. You
Yeah.
know, peeking through the blinds, and she has
Right.
a scanner and all that kind of shit. You know?
I love it.
Got a scanner.
Yeah, she
Love
does.
the police scanner, man.
Police
That's-
keeps it
yes.
on.
Did she go to sleep with it? With it
I
on?
don't think it ever goes off. I don't
Yeah.
think it's just plugged up and on the whole time. But
Oh, there's a website I should introduce her to. There's a website called Sounds of.
buddy, she's not going to get anything out of any website.
That's fair. Well, if anybody else in your family or anybody listening who's interested in police chatter, there is a website called Sounds of.
Really?
And it's just ambient music with the police scanner on top of it for any city. Like, so you can go the sounds of New Orleans or the sounds of Los Angeles, and it just shows it's like a dark skyline of whatever the city is, and then it just plays like wah, 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 and then just like
And it's live?
Breaker, yeah,
Like
it's like Breaker 19. We
Yeah.
got like Code 19. Like
Yeah.
it's weirdly soothing.
I would imagine so. Like, you know, just hearing the crime and exploits of
Well-
Dallas, Texas, projected over Brian Eno's music for airports.
Well,
you know, that's
the whole-
just, you know.
I found out about it because I was looking for somebody on Facebook after the Super Bowl was in New Orleans one year was like, somebody go, or no, I guess it wasn't the Super Bowl. It was the national championship was in New Orleans one year. And somebody on Facebook wrote like, for the love of God, listen to a New Orleans police scanner right now. Because it was literally just, there's a fight on Bourbon Street. There's a fight on Burgundy. Somebody jumped in the river. Like just crazy shit happening.
Yeah, New Orleans has to be the most popular one on that side, or well, I mean, up there. It's
Yeah,
gotta
for
be,
sure.
'cause, you know that's a wild ass city.
Yeah.
I love that city though. But yeah, so I knew she was going to open it, and so I was like, just okay, fine, open it with me on the phone, whatever. And
Hit it with the broom first.
She opens it, like she's like, okay, and she's like messing with it, and she hasn't said anything for a minute, and all of a sudden she goes. Like that, and I was like, "What? What is it? What is it? What the fuck is it?" You know? And she goes, "It's a guitar." But the way she said it, like over the phone or whatever, I thought I was like, a gift card? What kind of for what? A gift card for what? She's like, no, a guitar. It's a tiny little guitar. And I was like, a guitar, like a ukulele, and she was like, it's a little guitar. And so anyway, I'm learning to play the ukulele
Well, that's
now.
awesome.
Long story short, yeah, it's going okay.
I had one of those for a minute. My roommate and co-host of the What Did You Learn podcast, Monica Scott, she has a ukulele, but I spent a weekend and learned it. Now I've forgotten everything. But once upon a time, I could play both Freebird and Down by the River on the ukulele. So,
Hell yeah.
Well, maybe you can get somebody to send you one, Rivers.
yeah. Whoever Trae's secret ukulele admirer is, for the love of God, send me a ukulele.
And he'll record a version of Freebird on that ukulele.
That's right. Yeah.
We could get 3 ukuleles and do a bitchin' version of Freebird with it.
Oh man, there's somebody who's
Oh, yeah.
been able to do that.
Oh, play some slide ukulele. That'd be great.
Oh,
You know?
the Dwayne Allman of ukulele
The
players.
Gary Rossington of ukulele.
Do you guys all play stuff?
I play bass, but not well at all.
I play the kazoo, triangle,
Yeah.
things like that.
I'm so bad of a bass player. I played drums in more bands than I played bass. So.
Oh, nice. you could play some Stones licks on the old Get Fiddle.
Yeah, but I don't really do that. You know, I don't listen to worldly music much.
Yes. For those that don't know, Trae has a series of YouTube / Facebook videos called The Liberal Redneck, which the crazy thing about it is that people genuinely don't know that there are progressive Southerners.
Yeah.
And your voice, and when I say that, I don't just mean like your opinions. I mean like literally the way your voice sounds is like insane to people. That someone who, you know what I mean? Like,
dude, for sure. I've had multiple people say, that you're like seeing a unicorn, or whatever.
Right.
You're right. There are people, a lot of places outside the South who genuinely did not believe that people like me and you exist, and what's funny about it is I was getting a lot of hate from those videos, which is not surprising, that's the internet, but the ones that were accusing me of not being an actual
fake.
redneck, of being fake or whatever, were the only ones that pissed me off, which I think kind of in and of itself demonstrates an amount of redneckery.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you ain't going to call me not white trash, God damn it.
Right.
And there was primarily that specific accusation came from two groups of people, and it was stereotypical hick rednecks, again not surprising,
right?
But the second group was like extremely liberal, like Portland barista types,
yeah.
And where they were coming from was there is no one who sounds and acts this way,
right?
Who believes the same things that I do. It's not real. It can't be real.
Yeah, which is complete nonsense.
It's absurd.
I think there's a lot of people on the West Coast that don't have any clue what the rest of the country is like.
I 100% agree. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I try. When I meet people and tell them I'm from Alabama, people are just immediately like, what's that like?
I know.
It's like Fresno.
Right.
It's like Bakersfield. It's like all of these places in your state you've never been to.
Right. Yeah. People, the way they talk to us sometimes on the tour in other, especially on the West Coast or in like New York or wherever, they're talking to us like we're North Korean defectors or something. You know what I mean? Like,
you made it out.
How did you make it out? You know what I mean? It's like we drove. There are interstates. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We flew in a plane, a sky car, as we call them. It's always been wild to me because like they abhor any kind of prejudice or intolerance,
right? Yeah,
and they don't realize that is also prejudice. You know what I mean? Like, and it never even enters their mind that way.
Yeah.
People wig out here; they really do. People on the left, the liberals, I think in L.A. are like the liberals that the conservatives think like exist everywhere.
Yeah, that's also true. You're right. It goes both ways. Like, I was at a shoot the other night in Burbank for this random thing, and one of the people working there was she's a native Californian, and talking about where I'm from and whatever else, and she said something like, people in the South, they have some pretty interesting ideas about what liberals are, and I was like, yeah, well, liberals have some pretty interesting ideas about what the South is too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It 100% goes both ways.
There was a point that you brought up in one of your videos that was just like, I've been trying to figure out a way to articulate that. It was so perfectly where you said,
this election day, 40-some-odd% of the people in Mississippi will vote for Hillary Clinton, and 40-some-odd% of the people in California will vote for Donald Trump. So please stop acting like we're in a North-South Korea situation. Although, to be fair, if the South did have its own president, he probably would be a big fat dumb fuck. But still, The South cooks better chicken, plays better football, and sings sweeter songs than any other region in this country. So to act like we bring nothing to the table culturally is some fake liberal, hypocritical bullshit.
Yeah, so
It's not that much that
not
divides
that much
us,
of a
not like
difference.
people act. And it's like, going back to me being a unicorn, that 40% of people across, on average, across all the southern states, I mean, that's millions of people who vote Democrat in every major election or whatever.
Right.
You know what
Go
I mean?
to college in the South,
Right.
If you want to see,
I mean,
lots
it's
of different types
one of those.
people.
One of those things that's really interesting is that if you go to college towns in the South, I mean, it's like a really sort of interesting thing because it's like the one that I know best is Athens, Georgia. Right? You go to Athens, Georgia. It is the most liberal place that you could possibly think of, and there's just thick accents and people that, and there is that sort of thing where it's like these people are from the South, they grew up in the South, they're privy to the sort of things that the South is associated with, and they actively don't fall in line with that sort of thing, and they are in places like Asheville or Boone or what have you, but you go 5 miles out of those city limits, and it is like bald eagle mullets and just completely. And I mean, but by the same token, if you go in the north, you see very much things that are associated with like I drove through upstate New York. I'd never seen so many Confederate flags in my life.
And Confederate flags, maybe not so much, but in my experience, having been on the tour, we've been all around the country, and what you just said about the in the cities, but you go 5-10 miles outside of them. I say that to people all the time about everywhere. Really, the divide in America is between like rural and urban, cities. Urban. Let me tell you one of the craziest experiences I've had on the road so far that's related to this thing. We were in Winter Park, Colorado. Right?
I thought you were about to say Florida.
Ski resort town, and we did a show there, and there was two middle-aged women there who came together. They were friends, and I was talking to one of them, and she had already said earlier in the conversation that she was from some place outside of like Fort Collins or something, Colorado. And I don't remember how this got brought up, but she said that it was 99.5% white there, and that's where she was born and raised and spent her whole life pretty much. And that was relevant earlier. And then we went on, and then later in the conversation, she said, I drove through the South once for what she drove down to Florida to Miami or something on some just
Disney
road
World
trip or something like that.
Yeah.
But that she literally drove through it, and she was like, and I just could not believe how racist everybody was. That's what she said, and I told her, I was like, that's actually a huge pet peeve of mine when people who are from places like where you're from, where they literally only have white people.
Yeah.
When they talk about how racist the South is, because what the fuck do you know about racism? You know what I mean? Like you grew up in Ronald Reagan's dreamland. You know?
Exactly.
And she almost, I thought for a second that I'd put my foot in my mouth. She almost got me because she said, well, actually, I do know a little bit about it because my daughter is half black. And I was like, oh, fuck. It's like, all right, I fucked up.
Yeah.
But then she immediately follows it up. I swear to God. She goes, no, I do because my daughter's half black. I mean, she doesn't act black at all. Like she's really smart. She likes school. She's very articulate, speaks really well. Like she doesn't act black, but she's half black.
Right.
And I was standing there just literally kind of stunned.
Yeah.
'Cause I was like, that is the most racist shit I've heard anybody say in a long time.
Yeah.
And you're this liberal from Colorado who thinks the South is just terrible. And and I'm not saying everybody, but so many people live in their own bubbles, and those people that are in the liberal bubble or whatever, they're so disconnected or aloof in so many ways that they genuinely don't even realize the ways in which they are stupid.
People don't realize it, but historically, the South, for better and for worse, is a biracial society.
Without a doubt.
And that's defined everything that's happened in it, from slavery to segregation to the post-segregation era. It is a biracial society.
And the culture that emerged there, music. I mean, it's just how much of cultural exchange happened in rail yards and how
food too, man.
Yeah, food,
music, all
working in agricultural jobs and things like that. Where mines, things like that. There was you look at the exchange that happened that led to the formation of the blues and country music, hillbilly music, what have you. And there is that sort of thing where it's very similar because there was that degree of cultural exchange that were in these workplaces.
The Ballad of Curtis Lowe. Like you
Hell
say.
yeah, man.
That's right.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but somebody sent it to me. You know how John Oliver does those like deep dives, what's he call it, where he does like he spends 19 minutes on one
Right.
topic or whatever.
I know what you're talking about.
He did racial segregation, like present day racial segregation in the education system, like in the school system in America.
Yeah.
And he started out talking about, it's like, and I know what you're thinking, and they're in the South, and when are they going to catch up? And then he was like, well, actually, according to this, Pew Research, whatever data, like he had like the numbers to back it up, the South is the least racially segregated
Right.
region in the country, and the worst is metropolitan New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the educational system,
yeah,
that's the most segregated.
Yeah, the most segregated city in the United States is Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Right.
For the longest time it was,
Yeah.
and that's like led to like people that study these sorts of issues using that as like a very sort of natural petri dish to understand like
You know what I think it was in the North,
Formulations.
too? Is you had so many ethnic groups in a lot of these cities. So you'd have like the Italian section and the Irish section and the black section. Or Polish.
he went further into it and kind of like explained that and basically said that not the difference, but a big difference is that like in the South, as we are wont to do, we were just more overt and explicit with our racism to the point where we wrote it into law, like codified it explicitly. Blacks and whites don't mix.
Yeah.
Whereas in others, in the northern cities and other places, like you just said, it was de facto segregation, where with like zoning laws
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and housing
Yeah,
pricing and stuff like that.
redlining,
But they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were
and
keeping
it's-
all the non-white people in one area. They just didn't go so far as to explicitly state it in a
Yeah.
law.
It's still really strong in a lot of places.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fantastic collection of it's an edited volume that this sociologist Darnell Hunt that's over at UCLA wrote, and he gets into that with the formation of LA, where LA you had these sorts of things like redlining when it comes to mortgages,
there's
where there isn't
literally
like,
a line between like Linwood and Compton.
Yeah.
Where it's one side of the street is white and one side of the street's black.
and that's what they would like in these sort of areas. If it was redlined, they would refuse to write mortgages for
Yeah.
people of color.
Didn't what's his name that got ousted from the Clippers? Didn't he?
Oh, Donald Sterling?
Yeah,
Oh,
He played a
hell
big
yeah.
part in that whole shit, right? Like
Yeah.
back in the day, like that was a big way he made.
Believe it
his
or not, he's
bones,
not
right?
great.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's kind of an asshole.
Yeah. I feel the need or whatever to say because I run into this a lot when I'm doing this kind of thing, like talking about what we're talking about right now. I get accused of being, like an apologist or whatever else. And like
Yeah.
my whole thing is I don't ever say, or I feel like don't ever act like that shit doesn't exist or that
Yeah.
it's not real. Like what people think about the South. Like that's fucking real.
It's real.
All I've ever said is that it's not. It doesn't represent the entire South or everybody from the South. Number one, and number two, most of those problems are not exclusively Southern problems.
it's American
They're
problems.
American problems. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all I've ever said. Like, yeah, the shit exists.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
It's a fact, too.
Yeah.
It is a fact.
Well, have you ever lived down in the ghetto? Have you ever felt that cold wind blow? Well, if you don't know what I mean, won't you stand up and scream? 'Cause there's things going on that you don't know. Let it roll.
When was the first video that kind of like hit it big? The
Late April of last year. I actually think it was on 420, which
Oh.
is just a coincidence.
all right, light them up, everybody.
Yeah.
Was you high when you made the video?
I was not. No.
He's shirtless though.
Yeah,
hilariously shirtless on a back
No,
porch
I
in
would
Tennessee.
have rambled even more if I'd been high while doing it. Made even less sense.
But that thing takes off and
Mm-hmm.
leads to you guys wrote a book and you're doing the tour now.
Yeah, we so
Past guest Drew Morgan also involved there. Check out the Fish Out of Water episode.
Great dude, too.
Love that guy.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to give him a shout out because we was at that Motley Crue concert at the same time but could not find each other.
Oh man, but yeah, he's one of the co-authors of the book.
he is, yeah, him and Corey Ryan Forster's another
Also a great dude.
progressive Southern comedian.
Future guest, sure, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely need to have Corey on here. But the video blew up, and then shortly after that, first of all, I posted a post the next day that said okay, and it had bullet points of things. Like people kept asking me, it's like, yes, accent's real, yes, it's all real, whatever else.
right.
I am a comedian.
Yeah.
They are meant to be funny.
Yeah.
But I mean everything I say in them, and I really am. That's my background or whatever.
Yeah.
So when I said I'm a comedian, a lot of people started sending me messages or commenting on things, whatever. It's like, hey, when do you come into Baltimore, or whatever, like in this list of things. And so I asked my manager, Nat, who I don't know if all you guys know her, but I know Rivers knows her. I asked Nat, I was like, do you think we could actually like tour off of this thing? Because there's a huge difference between clicking like or share or whatever on Facebook and like spending money getting out of your house and going to a thing.
Yeah.
So I honestly, man, I didn't think it would work. I really didn't. Like we booked like a week-long trial run through the South in the last week of May. It was like Atlanta, Nashville, Asheville, Johnson City, Huntsville, and Knoxville. That's what it was. And so it was the last week, and the first one was Atlanta, and I was sweating it, dude. Really, I was. I was like, nobody's gonna fucking come see me. The punchline,
right?
In Atlanta. Yeah.
Is that the one George Wallace showed up to?
Yes.
The good George Wallace?
Yes,
the comedian George Wallace.
So, he didn't come up from the dead.
No, not the ghost of the shitty George Wallace.
Yeah, that would have been an even wilder story. But but I was really sweating it leading up to it because I was like, it's just there's no way. But we ended up selling out 2 shows on a Sunday night, and George Wallace came.
Yeah.
Like made it a point to didn't just like drop in, like came on purpose to see it.
Yeah.
And hung out with us afterwards and stuff. He went on stage. It was insane. And that was the first night of the tour, but that was like a month into the whole insanity with me because it took us that long to get everything set up.
Right.
And that was the first time that I thought like, this is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's been pretty much nonstop ever since.
I mean, I
live out here now. Like at that time, I still lived in Knoxville. I still had a day job, everything.
Right.
Not even a year later. Now I live in Burbank and full time comic and writer and all that shit.
What was the day job?
I was a contracting officer for the U.S. Department of Energy.
Oh, all right. Good time to get out of that one.
Yeah, buddy. Let me tell you, that is like retroactively. Like my biggest relief from this whole thing,
that you don't have to fucking
literally,
get
but
emails from Rick Perry.
Like, okay, so I worked there for 6 years, and now that's just I got out of business school at the height of the recession.
Yeah.
I was working in a bar for 6 months with a master's degree, thinking like, what did I do? I fucked up, And then I got that job. I didn't go like seeking that job out. I was just looking for work.
Right.
And that's the job I got.
So basically, were you doing like TVA sort of stuff, or was it?
Well, TVA's
a separate entity. Or?
TVA's completely separate, but they are headquartered in Knoxville, and we do TVA and DOE had a big contract for power, and that was one of mine that I was assigned to. So yes, I did work with TVA, but like. It wasn't like building dams or that kind of thing. We just had a contract with them. It was mostly, so for anybody that doesn't know, the federal government, and I think most people know this, federal government doesn't do much of anything.
Yeah.
They contract it all out to private industry, basically almost everything they do.
Right.
And so I like negotiated and awarded federal contracts for them. And mostly what I did was like IT contracts or facility maintenance contracts and shit like that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was a boring desk job.
Yeah.
Was pay okay?
Do what?
Pay okay?
I mean, dude, yeah. I mean, for that time and when you're at my age and everything else, I mean, no, the federal government's a good gig, period, really. You're not going to get rich.
Or for the time being,
unless you, well, I mean, I'm saying, if you not everybody wants to do this crazy shit that we do.
Right, yeah.
And if you don't, I mean, it's a pretty solid gig because you got all these benefits, the insurance and retirement and all that stuff is awesome. But I mean, the whole time I couldn't wait to get out of there,
Yeah.
But the 6 years I was there, the Secretary of Energy initially was Stephen Chu, who's a Nobel Prize winning astrophysicist from Stanford.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was Ernest Moniz, the head of physics and energy at MIT. Those were the guys in charge while I was there.
God.
And now it's fucking Rick Perry, who's like one of his most high profile moments ever was when he forgot the name of the agency
that he's now the head of
in a diatribe where he was talking about abolishing it.
Yeah.
But he wanted to abolish it but couldn't remember the name of it.
I thought
And
the
he's in
highest
charge
point was
now.
the fact that he got a D in a class called meats.
Well, you could go on and on with Rick Perry, I'm sure.
My favorite part of that moment isn't even Rick. It's Ron Paul trying to help him out. In the background,
Yeah.
he's just going, Department of Education?
Yeah.
Department of Education? And he's like, no.
No, it's not that one.
And you're like, dude, just say Department of Education. Get
Yeah.
yourself out of this hole, you idiot.
Yeah, man. That again, retroactively, that's like one of the biggest reliefs for me with all this shit. Is I'm like, thank God I'm not working for Rick Perry right now.
The day an email from Rick Perry comes in is just the
Yeah.
I'd be so upset. I'd be like,
It'll just be an animated GIF from duty.com. Department wide directive. It's the dancing baby. Y'all ever seen this?
his email
That's
is
an old meme.
Yeah.
Too. Get with it.
his email's on a star field and it's written in yellow.
Yeah,
With like rotating skulls and shit.
With the animated under construction sort of thing.
He's just sending out X pages or Angel Fire.
Gotta be careful of them and not safe for work emails.
Energydepartment.tripod.com.
If y'all want to see what we're doing around here, check out Mazanga. Make sure to give me lots of e-props.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's an interesting position because I graduated from college or graduate school around the time, my first run in graduate school around the time of the recession. And it was just shocking. Like, there was just like a generation of kids that like graduated from college. And it's like, well, looks like you're watching Law and Order SVU marathons for the next God knows how long, because that's
man. And I got an MBA, and the reason I got an MBA, like my whole reasoning the whole time was I knew I wanted to be a comedian, but I didn't want to do the whole starving artist thing.
Yeah,
I grew up dirt poor, and I was like, I'm done with that shit.
Right.
I don't want to wait tables. I want to get a job that pays well, and I have health insurance and stuff, and I'm gonna do that while I'm chasing my dream or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's the best degree I can get, the most versatile that I can just find a job that is a good job or whatever. And that's how I landed on MBA. And so like,
did you go to UT?
No, I went to Tennessee Tech University, which is in Cookeville. Yeah. And so when I got out, and like I said, like 6 months with just nothing, not literally nothing. I don't know if you ever ran into this at all, but there was like, at the time there were a lot of marketing jobs, and I'm doing the quotation marks over here, but it's like marketing jobs, and it turned out you're literally fucking selling magazines door to door or some shit.
Yeah.
I never fell for it or anything, but like I took a couple calls, or I went to a couple of interviews even, and immediately realized like, fuck.
Yeah,
this isn't real. You know what I mean?
You were trying to be a marketing guy for Waffle House at one point, right?
No, it was I was invited to do that because they saw me walk into the career fair in a pair of cutoffs, and they're like, "You'd be good for Waffle House." You ever think about working corporate?
Yeah.
But the ladies there loved me. They just said, they're like, "I love your style." Sweet. But no, I came out of college. It was like the time before the collapse, but it was like real tight because it was like you'd see things like policy and environment jobs. And it's like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then you just end up going to some like place that's like they just moved in and it was Perg. And it's like, yep, you're going door to door in Newt Gingrich country, lobbying and canvassing for progressive causes. It's like, dude, no. And it's all based on like how much you're a clipboard guy, essentially, And it's just like, I'm not walking through Henry County with a clipboard saying like, so what do you think about, X, Y, Z? It's just,
they don't even like neutral shit. Like my mom was a census worker in 2000 and said it was the scariest shit ever to walk up on a fucking like trailer and be like, hey, Bill Clinton has some questions he wants to ask you. Like,
as you just look over to at the door and the placard that says I don't call 911 is right there, and it's just like, ooh, that's not good. So when you started comedy, you started in Knoxville, I presume, right? Or
right after I got that job. So like I wanted to be a comedian since I was 12, but then I went to college in this like mid-sized town, not even a city, but and it's called Cookeville, and there's no club there or nothing. They have some open mics and shit now that have started like since I left, but when I was there was literally no comedy of any kind.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could have driven up to Nashville or Knoxville or whatever, but like at the time, man, I was enjoying college and whatever else.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's one of those I just never really got around to it things.
Right.
But I wanted to do it.
Right.
But then I graduated. I finally got that job. It happened to be in Knoxville. Well, Oak Ridge is where the job was. But I moved to Knoxville, and I got up there, and within a couple months of being there, it was one of those like, all right, do it now or shut the fuck up about it kind of thing. And I just went to an open mic at Side Splitters, which isn't there anymore, but that was the club in Knoxville. I went to an open mic, and then it went well, and I just caught the bug or whatever, and never. I've been doing it ever since.
And those open mics, because I would hear it secondhand about those open mics from Jesse Case, because he was familiar with it because he started in Nashville and would go all around for that sort of thing. Those open mics are weird.
Even in Side Splitters was kind of frankly shitty, like even by like that standard there, because it was pay to play always. Like you paid like a cover to do the open mic basically, and it always sucked. Like they wanted first timers every time because they knew that first timers will bring their friends with them who will actually pay, which means there will be people in the crowd.
Yeah,
right. And that was the only people who were ever there, was people who came with the other comics or whatever. But Zany's in Nashville, which like I love that club, and I've since headlined it and shit. And even before all this, I'd go up and do shit at Zany's, not just open mics or whatever, quite a bit. But their open mic though, you have to, if I'm not mistaken, you have to pay, but you also have to commit to bringing at least 4 people, and if they don't, you can't go up. And also that first time you got to bring 4 people, you got to pay whatever else, and you get 90 seconds no matter what. Like you could have been doing it in Atlanta for 8 years. You could be like featuring at the Improv in Atlanta or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you don't have somebody talk to somebody or know somebody or whatever,
right,
your first time is supposed to be 90 seconds. And the whole time, man, I was like, I'm not fucking doing that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not driving 3 hours to Nashville on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, for 90
seconds to turn around and driving back. And so
it sounds as bad as out here.
Yeah, but out here there's a reason for that though.
You get double. You get double 90.
Right.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, but again though, it's a little different. Out here there's just so many people.
Just so many damn people.
Right, exactly. I mean, I could see what you kind of have to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. I had the luxury of starting comedy in Auburn, which is like a small enough town to, like you were saying, there wasn't, my friend Anthony, who I met doing radio, is the guy whose show I went on the first time, but he was doing basically a monthly show at a bar. And so I started my own monthly show, and that was just kind of how it was. And so, the first time I ever did stand up, there's just like, oh, you can do 10 minutes, right?
Right.
Like, and you tell people that shit out here, and they're like, I've never done 10 minutes.
Well, dude,
it's a weird thing.
I've done it for long enough now, and I would like when I still lived in Knoxville, I'd come out here every so often, or I'd go to New York every so often, whatever else. So
right.
like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I mean, really, I don't know shit about it, but I know enough to know that that's the reality.
Yeah.
But like, still moving here now,
right?
And thank you for the time, by the way.
Oh, of course, anytime. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, coming out here now, like having been on the tour and like I'm, headlining our show, so I always do at least 35.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes more, and like that's just what I've gotten used to. And it's like I don't feel like I should be given more time. I don't feel like I deserve it or nothing.
Right.
But it's fucking weird to me though. Like it's
weird.
taking some getting used to, to going back down to doing like that amount of time or whatever, because as I'm doing right now, I tend to ramble and be overly verbose, and that's true in my comedy too.
It happens, man.
So it's fucking 5 minutes. That's one bit for me. Like if you know what I mean?
I'm the same way,
and I gotta cut it down.
Yeah,
well, this is the show for rambling and overly verbose.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Well, good.
That's what we do.
We'll put that in that's our new description on the new website. Just by the way, I want to steal your blurb. We do a show at the Improv every month called Hot Damn, and I was doing a character of like a lawyer who would just sue anything. And then I brought Trae up, and Trae goes, "I just want you guys to know I'm not part of the show. This is my real voice. I'm not part of this." You called it weird hee-haw on Adderall. Yeah. I was like, that's it. That's the show. We've been trying. You put it so perfectly.
Yeah, well, dude, I was sitting there watching it the whole time, and I mean, I was digging it, but it occurred to me because right before me, you went up there, and you did this like Southern lawyer asshole character, like a fake commercial,
right? Yeah, exactly.
And earlier, your other boy played his country song about his girlfriend's pussy and stuff or whatever, and like
the Brothers band.
And so, I realized I was like, I'm gonna have to say something probably because they're gonna think this is just part of it.
Right.
Like they're going to think the sketch is still going on or something. If I just go up there and just start talking the way I talk, they're going to be like, I don't get how this, I'm not following.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So yeah, I felt like I had to address it. And I was like, this is not part of it.
Yeah.
I'm just doing comedy.
The best part was you had to get to another show. At the very end, we had Derek come out. We painted him gold.
Yeah, you sent me that picture.
And we had him come out and do his Oscar picks in a Speedo while painted gold. So it's a real fun time. Come see us in LA sometime, you guys.
You guys
Hot
go
damn.
all out.
Yeah.
So I thank God for the TVA. Thank God for the TVA. Where Roosevelt let us all work for an honest day's pay. Thank God for the TVA. Thank God for the TVA.
Did you guys know or have you heard it? They're rebooting Hee Haw.
Oh my god!
Yeah, they are. I don't. It's one of those things like it may never. You know how shit goes.
Right,
it may
right.
never see the light of day.
Yeah.
but it's in development. A Hee Haw reboot right now.
It's not like it was an expensive show.
That's true.
Just
Yeah.
have a corn patch set and
But it was
animated donkey and
The guy
a few
who
guests, and you get a show.
The guy who I think is supposed to be the showrunner is in charge of it is actually legit though. It's Robert Ben Garant, from Reno 911.
yeah, in the state.
And he's from Cookeville, where I went to college.
no shit.
That's his hometown.
Oh, okay.
So he's from Cookeville, Tennessee, and he's from and he, with him and Thomas Lennon and all that shit, whatever else.
Okay, well that should be great.
I
then.
know, right? That's
Yeah.
what I said. It's like, well, it might actually be good then.
Yeah.
But just when you hear that,
Yeah, the
they're
reboot
rebooting
of
Hee
Hee-Haw.
Haw.
You're like, oh
you know,
god, this is gonna be a
because
fucking
that
nightmare.
reboot
Yeah.
of Mad TV went over so swimmingly. But
Yeah.
I remember watching reruns of Hee Haw on the Nashville Network.
Yeah.
That was a thing. The Nashville Network.
Yeah, hell yeah, I
that
remember
was
the
a
Nashville
yeah.
Network.
That
It was a good network. They showed Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, it was Dukes of Hazzard. It was Hee Haw.
ECW.
Is that what became Spike?
Yeah,
that's
it
what
is,
I thought.
Because it went from the Nashville Network, because it was always, it's like, my favorite thing that they always had on there was Dusty Rhodes' Demolition Derby, where it was just like Dusty Rhodes just doing his rap about them. These cars come together, you understand? And they crashing and they bashing, and there's two cars on one car, daddy. And then, they would have these things.
Was it an actual demolition derby?
No, there
or was
would
it
be
just-
demolition derby.
Or was it just Dusty explaining the
No, but there would be
concept?
Demolition Derby, and then there would be a thing at the end where it was just the best collisions, because it would just be because Demolition Derby was it would be in every town, Demolition Derby, and there was the dedicated, because the one that was close to me was Bithlo, Florida, and they would have the figure 8 track where they would race the school buses and stuff like that. So
Now, I've lived in the Deep South my whole life. I've been to a lot of different little redneck ass towns. I didn't know about. Did y'all have school bus racing in Lower Alabama? Because, dude, who was I talking to? Somebody just the other day, some industry person was talking about. Yeah, I was down in Florida doing some documentary or something on the school bus racing they have down there in Florida, and I was like, fucking what? But they just kept talking.
Was it Billy Wayne Davis? Because they sent him on a documentary.
I know,
down to Florida.
I know all about that one.
Yeah.
but
Freedom the movie.
Yeah, I watched
it's
that.
great.
But yeah, I didn't.
yeah, and it's on a figure 8 track. So
Yeah.
you would, if you
Full
don't
size or
full
crazy
size
kid
school bus, yeah, the full size school
Okay.
buses, yeah. But it would be they would have the best crashes at the end.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it would just be they would have green screen Dusty Rhodes on there, and he would come up from the bottom like the toasty guy from Mortal Kombat, and he would just be like, "Ooh, crash!
Holy shit!
Ooh, that one's gonna leave a mark, daddy."
Man, I don't remember that, but
Yeah.
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was probably the most quintessentially Southern outside of Bill Dance Outdoors. You know?
Yeah.
What was the other? Slam Ball. That was the other thing that was on. There was on
Hell
that
yeah.
transition from being the Nashville network to the
Man.
national network to Spike.
Me and my buddies used to play trampoline basketball fucking crazy. But just one of those Walmart trampolines under just a regular basketball
Oh,
goal.
just in the
Yeah,
backyard.
People, people get hurt and shit all the time. And I remember when Slam Ball came out, we were fucking pumped.
Yeah.
We're like, this is going to be our new shit. We're going to be Slam Ball super fans.
We had a history teacher at my school that just blew town randomly and quit his job because he quit his job to become a slam ball head coach. And he was going to ride.
He's living the dream.
Yeah, he was
What
going to
a
ride that.
dream.
Because it was that thing where it's okay, we're taking away the Southern element of the Nashville network, making it national. And the way we're going to do that,
Basketball
slam ball.
trampoline.
And there's no, but in a way, there's nothing more southern than trampoline fun.
Yeah, exactly, man. Dude, we used to trampoline basketball, trampoline wrestling.
Yeah.
And man, every white trash kid I knew, they all had everybody's house we hung out at. We had trampoline. You know what I mean? We fucked with it on the regular. But turns out that's very bad for your ACLs. That's what happened with slam balls. They were just getting they were turning up lame like racehorses.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't working. And you know what else was happening during that same time? And I just watched the 30 for 30 on this the other night. Was the XFL.
I just watched that.
I watched that too. Two nights ago. It's just wild. I mean, I watched it when it was happening, but like I'd forgotten.
Going
so
to
much.
it live was an event, man. It was,
You went to a
Orlando
XFL
Rage,
game?
baby.
Yeah.
It was.
Suck it, I'm Birmingham Bolts, dog.
Yeah, oh man, that was
It was
like
a Memphis Maniacs fan. They had Rashawn Salam, Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
Rashawn Salam.
we miss you every day, Rashawn. Yeah, but no, that was like low rent Mardi Gras essentially. It was like more fights and
It just
gratuitous nudity and just beer.
Sounds
Just
like a
like you
good
had to
time.
be
Dude,
drunk to
I should have
get
went to
tickets.
that shit.
Did you watch? Have you seen the documentary?
No, I
on it?
haven't.
So
No.
like that's what I'm saying. They cover a lot of that shit and like looking back because I was however old we was like 12, 13. So
yeah.
I mean I was like, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, it's like God, that is insane. That
Yeah.
they tried that, but it turns out, according after watch that documentary, they actually were genuinely innovative in a lot of ways that the NFL has since adopted.
Yeah,
and
getting rid of the
used.
fair catch.
That camera stuff.
That's
Yeah.
it. They had the sky cam. They had like the on the field cameras, and there was other shit that they did too.
The other big one, of course, is like Vince McMahon encouraged people to adopt a persona.
Personalities,
and that is, I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. It's like his whole thing is being a fucking dick.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
They really were kind of revolutionary in a lot of ways,
Fuck yeah.
but they just the football sucked so bad, and ultimately, you can't have a football league when the football sucks.
Well, you remember what it was? The one everybody watched was that first game in Las
They had
Vegas.
54 million viewers.
Yeah, and it was a blowout. It was so bad. I
Yeah.
think they had to switch to another game by the end of it.
And it was the championship game, the $1 million game was the lowest rated thing in the history of network television. And I think the thing that it actually beat was Meet the Ruddles movie.
Oh,
essentially,
shit.
yeah. Like the Ruddles movie
Ruddles
was like
a
the
good
gold
movie.
standard. It was the gold standard of the thing because like everybody thought it was going to be amazing because you had Gilda Radner, you had Erica Idle, you had all these
George
people
Harrison was in the
George
Ruddles?
Harrison,
Ronnie
and
Wood.
that movie. Tanked.
Yeah.
Like it was like all time super tank, and everybody was just like, you can't get lower than the Ruddles movie. But the XFL
Ouch.
championship game,
The XFL championship lost out to the test pattern.
Yeah. You know what?
And the fucking the national anthem at the end of the day.
So we're talking about the camera work and shit was actually
Sky
genuinely
cam.
good and like innovative and stuff. Well, totally randomly, the day after I watched it in some like Bader Meinhof shit,
Yeah.
I met a guy who produced those games. Like
Oh, no shit.
He worked for ESPN before doing college football, and then he went to XFL for that one season. And he told me the way they got people to do that was they came to them and was like, whatever ESPN's paying you, we will double it, literally double it. So they doubled their salary, put them up in like Ritz-Carltons and shit in every city they went to, like treated them like kings.
Isn't this how we got Ted DiBiase?
Crew members. And so I guess that's why like the camera work and all that shit was legit.
Well, that's
the
what
$1 million
Vince-
the $1 million game at the end was the winners just got the $1 million belt.
But only,
diamonds in it.
but only if they could bounce the basketball 15 times.
But if Virgil kicks it away, man,
Oh, shit.
sometimes you try really
But
hard,
the
but your
thing
best
was
isn't good enough.
that was doomed from the beginning because like the football wasn't particularly good. And as much as I love Jim Ross, and he has called many a football game in his day, the announcing was terrible. I mean, it was like Brian Bosworth, who has no experience whatsoever calling games. He was just the boss.
He was
Jesse
the boss.
Ventura.
Yeah, Jesse
He's
Ventura.
the sitting governor of Minnesota when
Yeah.
he agreed to do that.
and his only experience in playing football was that he played in junior college when he came out of when he came out of Vietnam or before he was in Vietnam. So his understanding of football was just like, oh, it appears to be that they have two halfbacks out there. I think that's a wishbone. It's
That's
just
pretty
like,
good. That's pretty good, Jesse Ventura.
yeah, but it's just like,
They so the shit that I had forgotten, and I think it's because I stopped watching it like everybody else,
like everyone
did.
else
After the first or second game.
By the end of the season, they were flailing so hard and just so desperate. They started doing all this like pro wrestling type shit. Including they had Jesse Ventura like go down the field and like try to pick a fight with the head coach. Like literally try to pick a fight with him, and they'd have Vince McMahon in the back, like assaulting a cameraman for fucking a shot up or whatever, and they'd show he's like throwing water in his face and stuff at a football game.
Yeah, they started to do sketches.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because remember when it first came out, people were like, "Oh, is this going to be like wrestling or is this going to be real?" And no, this is going to be real. And then as the ratings floundered, it became more and more like wrestling.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron Meyer, how do you respond to the fact that you gave Corvettes to all your players at SMU and destroyed a program? You're a better car salesman than you are a coach.
Just oh my god,
the funniest shit in the documentary.
he hate me cutting promos.
Oh,
It's
he
just
hate me, man.
He
Rod
hated me.
Smart.
He was like the poster boy.
Yeah.
But
They
it's-
even talked about that. Vince McMahon apparently told him, "You are now the face of the XFL." Like you're gonna be, and I mean, him and Tommy Maddox are the only two XFL players
That went
that
on to do
ever
shit.
amounted to shit or that
Yeah.
anybody remembers.
There were a few guys that were like on and off on certain teams, like Kirby Dardar and stuff like that. But
Paris Lennon, who was a guy they had on the documentary, he played in the league too afterwards. But
but that Tommy Maddox actually made something out of it. Rod Smart too, but Tommy Maddox. I mean, he
Tommy
was
Maddox
like
won a Super
got a
Bowl. He
ring.
didn't start,
Yeah.
but he got a ring. He started for him for a while. Then they got Big Ben, and he was on the team. When they
he
won
was
their
like
first
he
Super
was
Bowl.
essentially at like an all-time flop. Like when
Right.
you looked at Draft Bus, he was right up there. He was like not quite Ryan Leaf, but he was like in that sort of arena of complete bus. And then he killed it for what team did he play for? The LA Express or something?
Yeah,
like
the
that?
LA Extreme,
Oh,
and
they-
they won.
Extreme,
He won the only XFL championship ever.
Yeah,
with that
yeah.
team.
And then he
was a
made it to
quarterback.
the Steelers and made something of himself.
See,
He
I-
was pretty darn good.
See, I just hear the LA Extreme, and all I can think of is it's just two dickheads with acoustic guitars.
I just remember the New York, New Jersey Hitmen. They would get Bret Hart to do a promo for that shit.
Well, the funniest, if you haven't seen this documentary, it's called "This Was the XFL." It's on ESPN now. The funniest part of it is Vince McMahon walking into the interview with Bob Costas towards the end of the season, and it's funny because Bob Costas was working for
my
NBC.
God, yeah, that was
So he's acting against the network's self-interest by essentially trying to torpedo Vince McMahon. And
Dude, Costas was such a dick throughout that whole
it's
thing. Like he was so
amazing.
smug.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean that interview too, but like in the documentary,
general,
because they
yeah.
brought him back and interviewed him about and he was
Right,
such
he's
a
just
smug
like,
prick.
he's like, the XFL, I knew it was going to suck. Yeah. But
There was a
he's-
lot of prejudice like that against
yeah.
him,
But
for
he's-
lack of a better way to put it.
But he's talking to McMahon, and he's just burying him.
You want us to turn the cameras off there, pal?
Well, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
They cut to Vince now, age 71,
Yeah.
and he's sitting there, and he's just like, I wish he was bigger. I would have twisted his fucking head off. Like,
But I can't do that. He's diminutive.
he's just diminutive. And then hilariously, the documentary goes on. It ends, roll credits, and then there's a 2-second clip at the end. It's just Vince. He goes, I wish he was bigger.
Hey, what about that ending though? And, spoiler alert, but like they had like
It ends.
they had like a Marvel Cinematic Universe like teaser of an ending.
Right. Of them
Did
being
they
like,
not? Or
yes.
it's like wait, so is the XFL coming,
Coming
back?
back?
Or, like you're waiting on Samuel L. Jackson to walk out and be
Yeah.
like, here to talk to you about the outrageous football initiative or something. Like it was,
The
it was so
OFI.
weird.
That
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of do that.
They
'cause
do.
Vince and Dick Ebersol are sitting there. It's just like, I think we can make it work this
I know.
time, pal. And Dick Ebersol
Let's
goes,
put the band back together. We'll get you hate me. We'll get Tommy Maddox.
"What's he hate me doing? Bring me, he hate me.
Bring me Johnny Manziel. Bring me Johnny Football, goddammit. We're gonna make it work.
Man, Johnny Football would be if they did bring the XFL back.
He'd be the
that
guy.
would be amazing.
They just have a camera
He
on him
would
at all
be
times.
their guy.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Get him and
Johnny Football and Tebow right now.
Johnny Football, Tebow, and then also the Gronk, the other Gronk that doesn't play.
There's like 3 other Gronks.
Get all the Gronks. All the non-football playing Gronks and just put them on the team. Who gives a shit?
They could be the Gronks.
The New England Gronks.
New England Gronks.
Yeah, the Denver Broncos.
We'll get Goldberg out there. Goldberg and Lesnar on the same defensive line.
There's a funny moment where the power goes out at the LA Extreme game, and they have to switch over to, I think it's a Florida game, where Jerry the King Lawler is calling it, and it goes to Lawler, and literally he says, "Oh, I think we're live. We're live." I think I might have mentioned this to you, but I'm a tour guide. That's my day job.
Yeah.
And I'll mention to my groups and stuff like, oh, they're like, oh, where are you originally from? I'll say I'm from Alabama. And I had a group from England, and I was like, oh, I'm from Alabama. And they're like, oh, what brought you out to Hollywood? I'm like, oh, I'm a comedian. And they go, oh, do you know the liberal Redneck? and I was like, yeah, dude, that's my friend Trae. Like, I fucking, it freaked out. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that shit is still very weird to me, too.
And,
I mean,
do you get a really large? What's the response that you get
real
from
quick,
people?
I have one other thing, and I have this is today. My mom texted me just to be like, hey, what are you up to? I was like, oh, I'm doing the podcast tonight. And she said, oh, who's on the podcast? And I told her who we were recording with. And her friend, Laurie, said, let's see. Tell him I am 100% in love with that Trae Crowder. Convinced he's my soulmate. You tell him I'm his biggest fan and supporter. His book is wonderful and don't ever change. He called the problem with the election, also pissing off shitty white people. I love it. I love it. So that's from Laurie from Louisiana.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I appreciate that.
Yeah, she might send you a ukulele.
Yeah. So,
Maybe she sent the ukulele. I don't know.
The quickest way to Trae's heart is through 4 strings.
If you want to get rid of the spares, Rippers can take it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's fucking crazy because I think you have hit on a thing, like I mentioned at the top of the show, that people don't know it exists, and so when you hear that,
man, I get it. So the 2 responses I get typically are within the South or from Southerners if they happen to be transplants living somewhere else. Is what you just said. It's like finally there's somebody that's like me. You know what I mean? Like even if they don't have the accent or whatever, it's like I'm just glad to finally hear somebody like me saying the things that I think. Or if they're from outside the South, it's the I didn't know. I didn't know that. I didn't know you existed. And so it's like a novelty or like a curiosity thing with them.
Which I think is really interesting because there are a lot of the people that are Southern and are, progressive or liberal or what have you. There's a lot of them end up being transplants in other cities.
Without a doubt.
And that's one of those things that, is surprising with that is that, people don't meet individuals from the South that fit that profile because they're in every major city.
That's very true, and I don't really have a good explanation for that, but I can definitely tell you that it's a real thing. You run into it all the time. But I mean, you're right. That's a great point. So many people from the South, like you said, of our ilk, they do leave very quickly and tend to not come back a lot of times. So they are all over the place.
But it's weird that you have to explain to people like, hey, both of my parents, their parents' livelihoods were saved by the New Deal. You know what I mean? Of course there's farmers all over the South were fucking bailed out in the 30s. Those people are still around. The children of those people are still around.
Yeah. Man, both my paternal grandparents anyway. No, actually all my grandparents except maybe my mom's dad, who I never heard really talk about politics, period. He just, drove a truck and drank beer and whatever else. He was just that guy. He was awesome. But all 3 of the other ones, though, they always were Democrat, voted for Clinton and whatever else, hated Bush. I don't know.
Well, it used to be the solid South was Democrats.
Yeah, and then, then Democrats started liking blacks. And
Yeah.
But that's what and I haven't seen it yet, but that movie where Bryan Cranston plays LBJ.
Oh, it's
or whatever.
Incredible, man.
That's what it's about, right?
Yeah,
it's basically that whole thing.
Yeah, it's All the Way is what it's called.
Yeah.
Does he do all the LBJ weird things
Dude,
like the lurch? Jumbo,
Shitting,
talking
to people while he's taking a
on
shit.
the on the turlet.
He does it all. Yeah, the thing where
Oh.
he goes underneath his chin to fucking talk to people and shit.
One of the most impressive series of photographs I've ever seen was the photograph of him just because he was like 6'2", and him just doing the lean in on that one person, and the person was literally
leaning
back,
over.
cowering.
Yeah, I've
and
seen
the thing
that picture.
and the thing about LBJ was like LBJ was not like his record leans, the Great Society and stuff like that. He himself was not necessarily the most progressive guy, in his sensibilities and whatnot.
Well, one of the things they mention in the movie is that LBJ, a lot of people don't know, was a teacher in his early life, and he taught in Texas mostly Latino school children. So he had a big fucking beef with segregation from the beginning just because he loved his students, But in the movie, and they even make a reference to this, he sends his like house cleaner or somebody from Washington to Texas to take his children back. And she got hassled at a restroom with his children in the back seat. So it's like that thing of exposure. You know, he grew up, in his young adulthood.
Yeah.
Dealt with
Well,
that
that's
shit.
another thing that's hard to talk to people about who, don't understand it on that personal level because it wasn't their experience or whatever. But people like LBJ, like older people in the South, that like, and this is, it doesn't make it okay. It's still not okay at all to use like racial slurs and things like that. But there's I've known so many people who would just throw the N-word around like it was nothing or whatever, but like who genuinely weren't really racist. You know what I mean? Like if their a black neighbor in town or whatever was broken down on the side of the road, they'd stop and help them out and whatever else. They did business together, went to football games and sat together and shit like that all the time. And then
it's the difference between hatred and ignorance.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level
Exactly.
of, I mean,
It's
exactly what it
benign
is.
and then malevolent.
Yeah, I mean, but there's a level of peculiarness to it because there is these sorts of historical bases there, where it's just like things like, I was talking to my students about this, I was teaching them about like hegemony, the idea of culture, of Gramsci's idea of hegemony, the idea of like, people in power impose status quo that people consent to because they think it's the way things should be, but in reality they're being kind of hoodwinked, you know? So like the whole thing was that if you look at things like the Alabama Progressive Party, where it's just like the institution of these kind of both, bylaw to jury segregation, Jim Crow laws, and also other sorts of messages that kind of proliferated through like the Klan and things like that.
Yeah.
It was a thing that was created to drive a wedge between two groups of people that were
Who
like,
had way more in common.
where it's like, you're poor, you're a poor white,
but at least you're not black.
Yeah, you're a
That's
poor.
the message.
Yeah, and it was like you're a poor white farmer. You're probably working on the same sharecropping area as somebody that was a former slave, a liberated slave, and at that time, during, and you could probably speak to the history of it better. Good night. During Reconstruction and things like that, you had these sort of formations, these coalitions, and
William Mahone was a former Confederate general in Petersburg, Virginia. He led a coalition of like the Readjuster Party, a white-black coalition. This is like 1880s, before segregation came in real hard. So there were definite attempts, even in the post-Reconstruction years, to try to form like white and black voting alliances.
Have you guys heard of the Young Patriots? It was a group of poor Appalachian white people who'd moved to Chicago for work and were found themselves being, like harshly discriminated against with either just like housing policies or where they worked and shit like that, and having, not fair pay and just getting treated like shit and whatever else. And they actually ended up, they weren't called the Young Patriots this time. It's just a group of Appalachian people who lived in the same community because that's how that shit goes.
Yeah.
And then they made like a group and called themselves the Young Patriots. Their logo was the Confederate flag with like Young Patriots on it or something like that. And they partnered up with the Black Panthers in Chicago to take down the man or whatever. They were not successful.
Yeah.
But like, and I just found out about that myself. Like 4 or 5 months ago, somebody sent me something on it, and I'd never even heard of that before. But this is my genuine personal experience. This is another thing like I try to explain to people, and it's hard to do without coming across as, again, like an apologist or something. But like, My dad, who passed away in 2013, I can say unequivocally was not racist, like at all. He was a very proud Southerner. His brother's gay. He was very progressive. I mean, my dad was the OG liberal redneck, man.
Yeah.
Always voted Democrat, voted for Obama, was a liberal Democrat who wasn't racist, wasn't homophobic, fucking loved the Confederate flag. And there's a lot of people of his like age or whatever that are genuinely like that. It's like, it's not and it's still an ignorance thing because of what it represents to so many other people.
Yeah.
But like, it genuinely didn't represent anything racist or whatever to a lot of people. And that's hard for people to explain or for people to understand whatever now when you try to explain it. But it's just the reality.
Best pop cultural example, I think, The Last Waltz. You can see they're backstage. There's a big Confederate flag, and you've got noted white supremacist Bob Dylan and Joan Baez and the band and everybody up there.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, but now obviously, I mean, it's dead and gone and completely irredeemable now. There's no going back. But I think it is a very misunderstood icon.
You mentioned your uncle being a big part of your understanding of the world or whatever. Yeah. So he was your dad's. Is your dad's brother?
My dad's brother, and it was just them two. And like I said, my dad passed away, but my uncle's still alive.
Yeah.
And so really, it was kind of like indirectly my uncle, even though my uncle was around, and I was very close to my uncle and still am. But like, really the way I turned out the way I am, and I'd like to think I would have turned out this way anyway, is because of my dad. Like I said, he was like the OG liberal redneck, and he like raised me. I was raised by a single father, basically, and he was that guy. So that's why I turned out the way I am. But when I pull that thread farther, it's like, okay, but why is he the way he is?
Yeah.
What I've always attributed to is the fact that his little brother is gay, and my dad's known that for years.
Yeah.
And he loved his brother, and he was like, and he didn't let that get in the way at all, and
it's the same as the LBJ thing, man. Your personal becomes your politics.
Well, dude, like exposure and experience and stuff like that. That is like the only real way to defeat ignorance and shit, or like hate that's fueled by ignorance. Is by exposure and familiarity, because you meet these people and realize that they're not fucking demons. It's just
they're
like
just
Muslims
people.
now.
Right.
It's the same thing.
It's exactly
like
right.
if people actually knew any fucking Muslims.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're chill as shit,
dude. Yeah,
all the time. Every Muslim kid I went to high school with is like the nicest, chillest dude.
Do you know some of the ladies are real good looking too?
Yeah.
Let's be serious.
You always go back to that point.
Hey, do you know Ishmael Lutfi from Atlanta? Muslim comic. He just moved out here.
Yeah, I do know Ishmael.
Well, Ishmael, I love him to death, man. He's a good buddy of mine, and he's like you said, he's the most chill fucking dude in the world. Absolutely hilarious. You know, I don't understand how anybody could think Ishmael is the fucking devil.
Yeah,
I don't think Westerners have never really understood Islam too good.
No, hell no.
We had
it's probably an understatement.
Our buddy, we had our buddy Reza on the show. Reza Asghari, Muslim dude, comedian, loves weed and hip hop.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Let's talk about changing perceptions for a second, though. Remember I mentioned the Confederate flag changing? Nowadays, the stereotype with Muslims is all like terrorists and all this shit. I can remember when the stereotype on Muslims was the rich Middle Eastern oil executive who was going to buy up the country.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I went to... this is only like somewhat relevant, but I always thought this was kind of funny. I took an ag field trip in high school to Middle Tennessee University, who at the time genuinely had, so this is like the early aughts or whatever, they had like one of the preeminent alternative fuel programs in the country. Like they were kind of at the forefront of like alternative fuel technology for automobiles at the time. And we went down there and saw their like facility, and the guy who ran that program was this professor, this doctor guy who was in charge of it, and he was a fucking good old boy, Southern accent and everything. Come down there and he showed us all this like hydrogen powered cars and shit, and it was super cool. And he told us, at the end, he was like, boys, I'm supposed to stand here and tell you that, I got into this business and I want to find new, I want to get us away from oil and everything because of, the environment and saving the world and all that. And he's like, and I mean, hell, that's important. He's like, but between me and y'all, I just want to stick it to the Arabs.
Jesus Christ.
But I'm saying that what you just said.
That's the truth.
That's what that right there is what that guy thought of Muslims is what you were just talking about. And he was like, I got to take, I'm trying to help us gain independence from those guys because they're going to come in.
Because he probably was around during the OPEC oil crisis.
Abscam, remember that one?
I mean, as a side thing, was the ag thing because this is something maybe y'all 4-H.
Yeah.
Did you have 4-H?
Yeah,
you had to do 4-H in elementary school.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Head, heart, hands, and health.
Health, yeah. I was
right.
the president of my class 4-H chapter.
Look at this
my
guy.
God.
Yeah, right.
I got the chickens one year, and I picked them up when they were little chicks. That was the thing our 4-H did. Like you could sign up to get chicks, and you raise them, and at the end, there's like a winner. Like whoever's chickens turn out the best or whatever. So I picked up my chicks. And I was going to keep my uncle at the time, the gay one.
Yeah.
He had a little land like sort of out in the middle of nowhere in the county there, and he said I could keep the chicks on that, and he had this little shed, and we went out there and put them in them. Literally the first night, coyotes got in there.
Oh,
and
shit.
brutally murdered.
And when you're 9
all of them.
when you're 9 years old, that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Not just
the first night.
Did you at least bring back what was left?
No, man, I didn't say shit about it. And what's funny is they probably didn't. They probably asked my dad or somebody, I imagine, but they never asked me. Like, so what? What about your chickens?
I don't
like,
want to talk about
I just
it.
never said. My dad probably told him like, look, they got fucking. So let's just. They
tasted great.
Yeah. Some coyote out there is living high on the hog.
Yeah, that was my 4-H experience.
Yeah, there's because that's one of those things that's just kind of like I talk to people about that and they find it to be real. People that grew up like in the north or in because I moved from Northern California to rural Georgia. And, there was just a complete culture shock. But one of the things is, 4th grade, you went in there, and it was just like this 4-H thing, this ag thing. And I was just like, this is so weird. And everybody's like, yeah, we have 4-H all through school. And it's like one of those things that people kind of get thrown for a loop because they all had DARE, right? That was like a nationwide thing.
Right.
But having 4-H was something that people are just like, what, the 4-H club? You mean that thing from like Napoleon Dynamite or whatever? And it's just like,
first time I ever got to second base was on a 4-H horse judging trip.
That's what the hands stand for.
True story, yeah.
and the heart, if you're so inclined,
Yeah, but yeah, that's a true story. What about FFA? Did you have that?
Future Farmers of America.
I had moved.
Those awful purple jackets.
I'd moved out to Central Florida by the time FFA would have come in for high school. But there was FFA because there was always that FFA, FB, Future Farmers of America, Future Business Leaders of America, and there was always the Future Blanks of America.
Yeah,
that was like,
FCA was huge too, where I'm from, which is the Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Yeah.
That was
FCA was big.
That's big, yeah, and that was one of those ones that's just like there's a
Drew, remember Drew?
Yeah,
Drew
yeah.
was like the president of FCA.
Of course.
He was real big into that shit.
Fine Christian athlete.
Yeah.
What was his sport?
Well, man, actually, Drew's a hell of an athlete. He played
I imagine
basketball
so.
and football, but
Yeah.
he was an all-state quarterback.
Wow! Oh man, he definitely has the cheekbones to be a quarterback.
I think I can actually take what we're talking about and bring it into a fun landing. The subtitle of your book is "Dragging Dixie Out of the Dark," and I don't know about you. I think what we're talking about is one of the ways to do it, because the one thing that I think if you could sit down and logically talk to a person, no matter how fucking crazy political they are, most of the people that we're talking about and we've been talking about tonight are lovers of nature. I think the Theodore Roosevelt outdoorsmanship, hunting, like that whole conservation sort of ethos is one way that we could at the very least get people to believe in climate change. You know what I mean? Food is so important. And like I'm a Boy Scout. Like I literally, I'm an Eagle Scout. I went the whole way and shit like that. And we had leaders who were very conservative people, but were environmentalists.
Yeah.
Which is those two things I don't think have to be mutually exclusive.
Absolutely not, and they shouldn't be. I think the problem with that, as much as there is a problem, is, and this is unfortunate, and this is also generalizing, but a lot of those people, they don't believe it because they think, it's like a lie perpetrated by the liberal media or whatever, and also, like, again, it goes back to, like, exposure and whatever, and all they see is the woods in their backyard or the woods in their county, which are fucking great.
Yeah.
They're great. They're still beautiful. Nothing's going on there. There ain't no smog. dog in Clay County or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's as far as it goes for a lot of them. You know what I mean? So they don't worry about it, even though they absolutely fucking should.
This is my idea. Hunting exchange.
Okay.
Have hunters from Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, send them up to the fucking tundra to hunt moose so they can fucking see it with their own eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about exposure. Like, if you go to like Glacier National Park in Montana, you can see the fucking glaciers disappearing. And you know, the park ranger sitting there telling you when this park was founded in 1910, there was 75% more glaciers than there are right now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just a matter of getting people out of their comfort zone and stuff like that. So,
I'm not particularly comfortable with Glacier because that was a terrible gimmick.
Oh. With the ice pick, the thumb to the throat.
Yeah. The
But that's-
cryonic kick.
But yeah, the cryonic kick, Jesus. But that is one thing that I've always thought of is like just getting people out of their comfort zone and doing it in a way with something they like. So let's get a Kickstarter going to get some of these people to hunt some moose or caribou or some shit when it's tagging season up in the tundra, you know?
That sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
Fuck yeah, and it's fun, you know? I don't know.
But I mean, I think it's interesting that you know your thing has blown up so much at a time where there are like other sort of things that are popular that are very much of the same vein, like, you know, the drive-by truckers,
Right?
And you know,
Right.
Jason
Sturgill
Isbell, and
Simpson.
Jason Isbell,
So,
who,
yeah.
if I can plug a date, you're fucking opening for like Jason Isbell.
Yeah,
in
man.
Anaheim.
And the truckers. I'm
And the
opening,
tru-
I'm
oh,
opening
you're-
for the truckers
you're
in
doing the-
Athens
doing the-
next week.
Oh, nice.
That'll be
Thursday.
this
Next Friday.
We're
Next
at
Friday.
the Georgia Theater.
40 watt.
40 watt,
40 watt.
baby.
Oh, that's
the-
got to be fun.
That's
And,
that's the homecoming run.
Yeah.
It is their homecoming.
Fuck, that's so cool.
Yeah,
man.
and that's
is
cool
very
that it's
cool.
in that venue as opposed to like the Georgia Theater, which is a nice venue. But I mean,
we
that's just,
actually we did the Georgia
Yeah.
Theater
Yeah.
2 days before they did in the fall. But yeah, those two things are huge for me. Opening for them and opening for. I mean, I've gotten to know the truckers actually. Like
Right.
me and Patterson Hood text each other and shit, and that's still crazy to
That's
me.
so nuts, man.
But like Isbell, I haven't met in person yet, but obviously I'm going to and
Yeah.
opening for him, which is huge. But to what you were saying, we being me, Corey, and Drew, we used to talk about that all the time. Like we'd have shows and shit, you know, sparsely attended shows
Yeah.
we put together, whatever, and then we go back to Corey's place or my place and whatever, and we'd drink beer and smoke cigarettes on the back porch, and we would talk about how we were like, man, the time is right for what we do, and we
Yeah.
can tell because it's happening in other avenues like music, but also like a TV show like Justified,
Yeah.
or whatever, you know, like shit like it was out there, like Southern art
Yeah.
or whatever, or at least art with a very distinctly Southern flavor,
Right.
that wasn't bro country or, you know,
Right.
or like blue collar type TV
Yeah.
shit. It
Every-
was happening, and it was like,
Yeah.
even if they weren't hugely popular, which some of them are, they were like, you know, critical dark. They were cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That shit was cool. Like
Every-
Sturgill Simpson is cool as fuck.
Every
right now.
other band has Memphis horns on it now.
Right.
Like every other
Yeah.
band's trying to sound like Otis Redding.
And we
shit.
were like, but in comedy, that's still that you don't really see that. So we were always like, if we can just find a way,
Yeah,
to get it out there, whatever, and you know,
man,
fucking working out.
I think you hit it, brother.
My daddy played poker in the woods, they say, back in his younger days. Prohibition was a talk, but the rich folks walked to the woods where my daddy stayed. Jugs and jars, some shiners. These old boys here, they ain't miners. They came from the 29ers that didn't take a hole in the ground to put the bottom in their face.
Trae, where can people find you on the internet, sir?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter or on Facebook, and it's just my name, just Trae Crowder, and I spell it wrong, Trae Crowder. It's just white trash things.
I've actually wanted to know that. Are you the third Trae Crowder, or is it just they like the name Trae?
just like the name again, it's white trash naming convention.
I love
It's
it, dude.
Just, they just liked it and they spelled it funny.
Okay.
But anyway, that's just my name.
Makes you
social
unique,
media,
you know?
Yeah, right. Well, there's a few other Traes, Traes out there. Literally all of them are black guys, and they're
right.
athletes for the most part.
So you should be able to find him pretty easily.
Yeah. I'm the one white Trae.
Okay.
But and then also website Well Read Comedy, because our tour is Well Read Comedy Tour. Well Read is like what the three of us call ourselves, and that's RED, like redneck.
And pissed off.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Got my red
Get
up.
our red up, yeah.
Fuck yeah.
But it's wellreadcomedy.com, and there's all the dates, all tickets. You can buy the book there, merch, all that good shit.
Hell yeah. Well, man, everybody go out and check out Trae's stuff, The Liberal Redneck on Facebook and also on YouTube. Lori loves it. Lori down in Louisiana can't get enough, and I think you're going to love it too. If you're not familiar with the man, go check out his stuff. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegoodspod. We're on Twitter @thegoodspod. Pat, what should they do when they get to iTunes?
Well, obviously, if you listen to the podcast, you know the spiel. But if it's your first time, rate, review, and subscribe. Tell a friend. And, get to, if you want to tweet, you get to know some people. We got some wonderful listeners, really, really cool people, and of different sort of locations around the world.
Around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
England.
Shout out to Stump Chuckman holding it down in Canada.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of people.
We're like an Epcot.
Yeah,
We're
like different mindsets. We got people that have
we're around
different
the world, but we're still in Florida.
Yeah, different
a giant golf ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm actually animatronic.
Hop aboard our spaceship Earth at the Good Spot.
Yeah, I'm animatronic.
We're sponsored by Exxon.
Yeah, exactly.
But we are sponsored by Bug Assault.
Yeah, that's right.
bugasalt.com, Exxon.com. But rate, review, and subscribe. Show the attitude of gratitude to the podcast. Show the attitude of gratitude to people you know, people you meet at the grocery store, because it's all about spreading the attitude of gratitude.
Because if y'all don't have the attitude of gratitude, then fuck you.
Fucking A.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week. This is Jason Isbell, and the song is called Assassin.
Used to be a killer, best killer in the land. Killed women and children just as easy as a man. I rolled their mangled bodies nonchalantly out the door. But now I've lost my taste for killing anymore. Made me lots of money, was the best at my job. I never had the 9 to 5 or cheat or steal or rob. Just load up my guns and leave them on the floor. But I ain't got the stomach for killing anymore. Something must be done, but I've done all that I can do. Good as an assassin who just can't follow through. She took me in her arms when no one else would have me. Taught me how to throw the blade but never let them nab me. Taught me how to shoot so straight without a moment's guilt. She was the most beautiful thing that I have ever killed. Something must be done, but I've done all that I can do. We're good as an assassin who just can't follow through.
The Goods from the Woods was mixed, edited, and distributed by me, Rivers Langley. You can find the show on Twitter at The Goods Pod. Our theme song was composed by DJ Smiles. Check him out on Twitter at DJ Smiles.